Does your financial advisor take the time to really listen to you? Is your financial strategy personalized for you and your family? Will your financial advisor be there as your life and financial situation changes? When you work with Edward Jones, they focus on what's important to you. You'll work together and use an established process to create a personalized financial strategy backed by the advice, tools, and resources to help you reach your goals. And they'll partner with you to help your strategy stay on track. Visit edwardjones.com or stop by the office of Todd Nash in Coralville, Jeff Rudolph, or Scott McGill in Iowa City, or Travis Whitmore in North Liberty. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Welcome to the Seven Nation podcast here on yourprepsports.com. We are making no promises today. If our pre-podcast meeting taught us anything, it's really that Ryan Merkin, who I'm joined by as always, we really have no direction or any idea what we're going to talk about today other than high school football, but we don't know what in what regard that will be. So buckle up and we'll take you through the next whatever 30, 40 minutes here and hopefully entertain you a little bit. But again, no promises.
That was easily the best pre-production, like podcast for us, pre-podcast. But that's the best preparation meeting I've ever had, I think, Rob, where we basically both just said we have no idea what we're going to do. Like, let's just hit record on this thing and see what happens. All right,
you're ready between vacations. My mind is like locked into Iowa football preview stuff that I've been writing all week, and my mind is just numb with that. And so what better time than to podcast?
Yeah, I'm back from vacation number 1, leaving for vacation number 2 tomorrow, which I'm super proud of myself though, Rob. Like I got a ton of stuff done in between like the 5 days that we were back here, like house, job, all those things. Like I've been super productive. So I've earned the second leg of this vacation, but you know this, like I have just flown 1 million miles a minute like the last couple of days, even like these 5 days, like my to-do lists have grown to-do lists, like with your prep sports, with home stuff. And so I've gotten a ton done, but I am all over the place, as our listeners are going to quickly find out, because I have just been jumping from one thing to another in these 5 days. I've been super productive, but drank too much coffee. But man, I'm ready. I'm ready. This is the first vacation was awesome, Rob. We went out to the Black Hills of South Dakota, had an awesome time. Kids loved it. And this vacation coming up is like our whole family's going, but this is my this vacation's got to get me through to like basically Christmas time. So this is my relaxation vacation, because when we come back, it's fall sports straight into winter sports. It's got to get me to that like 2-week break that we have for the holidays, for sports wise, for work wise. So I'm not going to do a lot. I'm going to take in, I think, some gorgeous scenery and I'm going to do me for a little bit, Rob. So I'm ready for vacation, but I've earned it, I think.
Did you get me anything at Wall Drug?
Of course I did. Rob, you can't. That's where I got all the souvenirs forever. I mean, Rob, we could do it. How long do we want to podcast today? I know your love of Wall Drug, and now Rob had told me about it, and I had.
Your kids loved it, didn't they?
Everyone knows about it.
It was like Christmas for your kids in July, wasn't it, or August, whatever the hell month this is.
And we stopped on the way there and on the way back.
Of course,
we did like our main Wall Drug trip on the way back. So yeah, I mean, I strategically planned it so my kids were all cranky because it's 7:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning. And then you wake them up and you're like, we're at Wall Drug. And they were just loving it. They were on cloud nine then.
If you can't find it at Wall Drug, it cannot be found.
What's that?
If you can't find it at Wall Drug, it cannot be found.
That's true. I got a 5-cent cup of coffee. You got to get the 5-cent cup of coffee, right?
Yep.
Free ice water. Yeah. Good stop. Good end to a really good vacation. And I tried to send Rob plenty of photos of Wall Drug and the various billboards leading you to the exit for Wall Drug.
No, we've got family shots from Wall Drug. A lot of them. Yeah. So trying to steer this back on course here. You've been out to some football practices, some prep football practices in between your two vacations. I give these kids credit, man. This weather, typically when it's first day of football practice. Okay, let's kick up the heat and humidity in Iowa. It's like clockwork. It's like the rain at the state softball tournament.
It's soccer season or track season in reverse, where I joke with that about all the coaches every year, because you start soccer inevitably. I sit at a soccer meet, usually soccer and not track, but sometimes track. But I sit at a soccer game and watch kids run around in long sleeves and sweatshirts, and the coaches have parkas on, and we sit there in March and get snowed on and the wind blows and you freeze. And then you go to the state soccer tournament in June and everybody's trying to make a mad dash for the one spot of shade. And I'm sitting Rob and Susan taught me this trick a long time ago. You're sitting behind a white pole. You can just to steal like the foot of shade that a white pole gives off, because it's 100 degrees and they're taking water breaks. And that's football season in Iowa in reverse, where, man, this week has been rough. And all these teams had camp last week in some capacity, talking to the coaches. A lot of these coaches, they do their youth camp and then they do their high school camp in conjunction with that. And it's tough. I mean, it's the joke, just like we'll say the same thing if it snows in November and we're playing snowball or whatever, but it's football in Iowa and it's tough. But I mean, it's hard. It hardly feels like football weather. And been out to 4 practices, have another one today. And then I'll get to a couple more when I get back after this short little vacation. But I was just telling I've told several coaches, it's going to be a super fun year in the area. I say that all the time. I love football season, but there's a lot of intrigue this year. A lot of intrigue with all, 4 new coaches of 7 teams, Rob, James Harris at Liberty High, Jason Dumont, who's new, but is very much, been a huge part of the Regina success. So he's new in his position, but he's not new at Regina. And then Mitch Moore at City High and Matt Hattie at Clear Creek. So been out to see a couple of the new coaches already. Need to go see a couple more, but and how they do things. But it's, a lot of these schools, I haven't been through all of this, so bear with me here. I'm kind of thinking, but a lot of these schools lost not just starting quarterbacks, but really, 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 Marcus Morgan and Gavin Hirschman and Ashton Cook and Rafe Hamilton. And you look at some of the quarterbacks that have graduated, and that's, as fans and media, that's Rob's been doing this since Big Ten Media Day, I'm sure. Where do you start the conversation always? Do you have a quarterback back? So, and really Ryan Navarre at Clear Creek the same way. I mean, a lot of really productive guys that filled the stat sheet for multiple years, are gone. So you have questions there. That leads to the intrigue. The 2 things you start with: coach, quarterback. We lost it. I say just the Your Prep Sports area lost several 1,000-yard rushers. So there's going to be a lot of new guys filling the key spots that you talk about. That being said, I think we have a lot of really good football teams here that are going to win a lot of games and be playing meaningful games in October. Because I really do think that our teams are going to be highly successful this year, Rob. But it's just going to be different. And that's fun for people like me. Like, I love kind of, penciling in where guys are going to be at and who are guys that can, take their game to the next level and see guys do different things. So it's going to be fun. There's a lot of quarterback competitions going still. I mean, as we sit here today, the 11th, we're on the third day of practice, true practice. So at least there's spots to be won and competitions out there, but exciting for sure. And the thing, we mentioned the heat right away. It's been so hot. I've been to 4 practices already. In the tempo, the energy, the enthusiasm. Now, granted, it's day 3. That probably is going to wear on some of these guys as you get into next week and in the end of this week, but it's been super encouraging. I mean, there has been a lot of the attitude is great at all 4 of the places I've been to, and been to some morning practices, been to some evening practices, everybody kind of doing it differently. And it's been fun. It's just awesome to get back out there, especially now today, people have helmets or, shoulder pads on. So you get a little bit of the sound, pads are popping a little bit. It's football season. It's cool. It's a good time.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody has a greater appreciation after what they went through last August, before that season like no other. And still got to be careful. We're still dealing with the virus in this country, but certainly in a better spot than we were at last year at this time.
It's amazing. I mean, it really is amazing. This is, again, I was joking about it before, but I have a tendency to just go too fast, to talk too fast, to do everything too fast, Rob. But it's amazing. I was in the middle of my first interview with a coach, and I had it planned out and what I wanted to do. And I had almost forgotten where we were at this time last year. I really had. I mean, it's like you just speed through life when you don't slow down. And my wife is constantly on me to slow down and soak it in a little bit, or however you want to say it. Man, I was talking to a coach, and they kind of reminded me, no off season, no 7-on-7. A lot of these things that we didn't do last year, even for high school football, there's an off season, Rob. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean, anybody that doesn't knows sure. This. And we weren't in school at the end of last year. Everything was different. We weren't sure what was going to happen with school coming up, and there wasn't the summer conditioning and all these things. And so I had to, after that first interview, I kind of had to come home and sit and reset. And I actually went back through our website and looked again at a bunch of the stuff that we did from March to, August last year. And we had summer sports, obviously, but it's just different. And so, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these coaches and even kids, and we don't give kids, maybe I say kids, high school kids, we don't give them enough credit for this sometimes. You do feel like there is a renewed sense just a sense of appreciation, for being able to play sports that these kids enjoy. And like you said, I mean, there's still an awareness out there. I've been really impressed talking to all the coaches and a lot of the kids that they're aware, there's a responsibility to remain aware of what's going on with the virus in our country. But a lot of coaches excited, and players excited to be back to closer to normal. And I don't like that term, but they're appreciative of where we're at right now after where we were at last year at this point, Rob.
Yeah, pre-pandemic normal. The new normal, however you want to frame it. It'll be nice having a little bit. And I think, if anything, teams learned last year that you have to commit to this thing, because you put yourself in a bad spot and get yourself compromise yourself, then that can really impact the season. And it was impacted around here last year in Iowa City, obviously.
For sure.
So I think we all have our fingers crossed that, again, as close to the new normal as we can get here, and competition isn't affected.
Absolutely. Just kind of knock on wood, do whatever you do, right? But I think that's what we're all going for, right? And on the same page with that. So exciting to, at least at this point, to be feeling kind of the same way we were. It's fun to not be asking those questions too, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's on the record or off the record. Just
right.
Last year at this point, every time that you're talking to somebody, it's like, what's going on? Where are we at with this? So it's fun to just, and I'm sure for you with Iowa and anybody that covers college sports or professional sports or whatever, it's fun. I mean, I've been gearing all my questions towards football. We're actually talking about football, which is fun, because that certainly wasn't always the case last year.
You talked about the quarterbacks. Any other storylines that, quarterbacks and new coaches, but any other things storylines, items that popped out from your visit so far?
Yeah, I mean, I really do. I mean, I mean this. I think there's a lot, you know, and we'll pod again next week or at some point, Rob, for the listeners. But so far, I've been out to Iowa City High, West High, Clear Creek, and Solon. So I'm kind of, you know, a lot of this is just when teams practice, what else I have going on, how I can kind of work a couple, you know, into the same day, or, you know, I drag my kids to a lot of these too. So they were all whining. It was hot today. I'm like, come on, guys, suck it up. No, I'm just joking. But around my kids' schedules too, I'm dropping kids off at various activities and dragging the little one with me and stuff. But starting with West High, you know, they played less games last year, but they were quarterfinalists last year. I mean, a really good team. And it's just kind of become, it's a little bit of a broken record, but they've maintained that, Rob. They haven't been back to the Unidome. They had those back-to-back back-to-back runner-up finishes, but they've really established themselves where I think they've kind of, when you think of consistency on the eastern side of the state, you think Bettendorf. I mean, in fact, as I have conversations with 5A, I used to saying 5A coaches, it's like, how's Bettendorf going to be this year? And this goes back, I'm not saying I've had this conversation this year, but you go back since I've been here in 2013, how's Bettendorf going to be this year? And it's just, well, they're Bettendorf. And they mean that as a compliment. You know, it's like they're at that level. And I think West has really become that type of a team where you lose a guy like Marcus Morgan, and I think they expect to be right back at that level. You know, I mean, it's just the standard has truly been set there where they've done it under Garrett Hartwig for almost a decade now, where they are going to be one of the premier programs in Eastern Iowa in and out. So I think that's kind of I don't know if you'd say a storyline, but, you know, they really think they have a special group again. They're going to be a little bit different when you look at kind of who comes back, but they really like their group. And then at City High, it's just that it's kind of the opposite. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but, you know, they've won 2 games 4 years in a row. And it's kind of for them getting back to that standard where we don't have to go through it, but we both know, you covered it, we both know the standard that City High, you know, football expects to be at. So it's kind of them, it's kind of, you know, West maintaining where they've been and City High getting back to where they've been. And right now, I mean, just talking about those two, starting with those two, I think both those teams are going to be really successful this year. I think on paper, you look at West and what it lost. I mean, it lost all of its offensive production on paper. I mean, it lost its top 2 or 3 running backs, it lost all of its receivers, lost Marcus Morgan. But they bring a lot back up front. They have some guys that are sliding into those skill positions that they really like, and that, you know, and that I've seen that have played some varsity football at other positions. And I think they're going to be good. They're going to be a little bit different, but I think they're going to be talented. And like I said, they just have guys that have played at that level and within that program that know the standard. And City High brings back a lot, Rob, a lot of guys that have played a lot of varsity football, 3 really good guys up front, in Austin Friday and the Goodrich boys. And that's the starts, the makings of a really good offensive line. They got to find a quarterback. And they have, you know, I know they have multiple guys that they're looking at there, but they bring back guys at receiver. They bring back guys in the offensive backfield. Gable Mitchell's obviously, you know, 3-year varsity player. Ben Keeter is Ben Keeter. He's going to be, you know, really good for them on their defense and moving around on offense and stuff. So I think they're poised to make a big jump this year, Rob. I think they've got talent. And the other two, you know, Solon and Clear Creek that I've been out to, both have interesting storylines too. You know, Clear Creek with a new coach. And I'm going to have a lot of these stories coming out too, but Clear Creek has a couple guys I talked to, Ben Swales and Gage Freeman, who were, you know, Ben Swales had 6 interceptions in 8 games last year, starter in the defensive backfield. Gage Freeman was 3rd on the team in tackles. So these are both 3-year varsity guys, you know, guys that played as sophomores, guys that were huge contributors last year on defense that now step into quarterback and running back. And you know, guys that are just, I think the story with them is they've been good, just like both those two guys have been good. Now they're trying to become, you know, be more than good. You know, now those guys are taking on bigger roles. So it'll be interesting to see how they develop. And then Solon's a lot. Solon brings back a quarterback. Blake Timmons, who started as a sophomore last year, was really good. But then they're a lot like Regina. They're a lot like West. Basically, all the rest of their skill position production is gone. You look at their receiver and you look at their running backs. It's like a lot of that's gone off paper. So how do they fill in those spots? And they have guys they really like too. But they kind of got to fill in some of that stuff that people like me and sports writers look at. Because Regina's the same way. They bring back a ton of guys on their front seven on defense. Rob, bring back a bunch of really good offensive linemen. I think 3 or 4 guys up there. I haven't dug as deeply into Regina yet, but they're going to be really good up front on both sides of the ball. But at the same time, you don't just replace an Ashton Cook or an Alec Wick or a Theo Coley, guys like that. So again, they have guys they really like. They have guys that I've seen in other positions that I think can I don't want to say pick up the slack, but slide into those bigger roles. But that's always the story with high school football. Classes come in, classes go out. You got to have guys make that jump from contributor to guy, to dude, to stud, however you want to say it. And that's going to be a big thing to watch for all 3 of those teams going forward, is how do those guys kind of make that jump?
You get a sense, either at City or Clear Creek, has there been like a big shift in scheme, just kind of schematically with what we're going to see this year?
I think probably more at City, and without, I'm like I said,
yeah, I know it's still early.
Know exactly what they're going to do, but Coach Moore, Mitch Moore, the new City High coach, has a really good coaching staff that he's put together. He's really excited about that.
He's really excited about everything.
He is. He's a high energy guy.
I saw him at the Desmond King camp. I got to meet him out there, and he's got the energy. There's no doubt about that.
Energy is not an issue. And all the guys said that too. They're like, you have high energy, or someone's going to explain to you that you don't, is basically what they said. But yeah, energy is not an issue over there. But no, I think they'll be the one. If I had to guess, and I haven't seen them, I've watched a little bit of practice, and I'm not trying to give away anybody's, game plans, but I think they'll be the one that maybe looks the most different, if I had to guess. Clear Creek, they retain a lot of their coaching staff, and not that, Coach Hattie's not going to put his own thumbprint on it. Of course he is, but it'll be, that's one of those things that kind of gets me excited, just like I said, with the new coaches and new quarterbacks and all those things, to kind of see what these teams look like 2-3 weeks in, and then to see how they look in week 8 or 9 as well. But it's fun when you get what, for me, because this, and a lot of the people that read and follow the site know this, I really enjoy getting to know the kids and the coaches. And I'm really, really, really excited about all 4 of the new coaches. I'm going to keep calling Coach Dumont a new coach, even though if you followed high school football around here, Coach Dumont probably, but with these new coaches, I'm really excited. And then because I'm excited with the same thing. Regina's a good example. They brought back, a big thing from talking to Coach Dumont was keeping that coaching staff intact as much as they could. And a lot of those guys, Ed Hinkle and a lot of these guys are back with Regina, but as a coach, there's always things that you're going to tweak a little bit, and you want to put your own flair on it. Flair is not the right way to say it, but have your thumbprint on the program. So it'll be interesting to see how all these guys do that a little bit. That being said, it's a good segue into, we ran our first, I kind of hinted at this before, but we're doing question and answer with all these coaches. And we ran the one, with Coach Hattie at Clear Creek, is up on the website right now. And we haven't really done anything like that before. It's just a question and answer format, but I really like it with these new guys. I wasn't planning on doing that. And as I interviewed all these coaches, I'm like, people don't want to hear what my writing about these guys, or it's like, give us your background. How did you end up at these places? Where did you do? So it's a really good chance, if you're interested in reading about any of these guys. We're going to run those, throughout the next couple of weeks. It's a good chance to kind of get some background, and we tried to have some fun with it too. Coach Dumont, talked a little bit about just how the game has changed in his 13 or 14 years coaching, specifically coaching defense at the high school level. And so we tried to have some fun with it too. I asked Coach Hattie a question about he's coached so many different things. He's coaching girls basketball at Mount Vernon. He's coached all these sports. So had asked him a question if there's any sports he hadn't coached. I think he's coached golf in there too. So, but I think that's a great way to kind of to learn a little bit more about these coaches. So keep an eye out for that. Those all three, the one with Coach Hattie is up now, and the other three will be up, sometime here in the next couple of weeks. So as we get into the season, I think that's a good way to just, read their words and what they had to say about, all these positions where they're at, and maybe, how they kind of see, what they want people to maybe say about a program, that they coach. So it's been fun to get to know those guys over the last couple of weeks too.
We saw changes at Solon last year. Obviously a change of an era there with the Millers going out. I thought Blake Timmons was one of the kind of revelations around here for local football last year, taking over for Cam Miller, and did a really nice job doing that. But he, as you said earlier, he had the benefit of having veteran guys around him. Now he's the veteran guy. What do you see from him this year, and kind of how his role might change a little bit in terms of how he leads that offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think they eased him in a little bit, and then again, and I hit Solon this morning, and talking to Coach Stanton, and he was one of the guys that made a really good point, because anytime in high school football that you return a quarterback, it's huge. Just because, I mean, not all of the time, but most of the time, it's not uncommon to have a guy for 2 years at the most. And Blake was a sophomore starter. Marcus Morgan was a sophomore starter. Ashton Cook, we've been spoiled around here. That West had a stretch for a long time under Coach Hartwig where they had guys for a year, and that's, in a way, you like that, right? I mean, you have a senior that comes in, but they learn the system, and then they have 1 year where they play. And I think that was like the first 3 or 4 years under Coach Hartwig at West, they had guys like that, or at least the first 2 or 3 years. But there's no substitute, especially at that position, for game reps. And he got those last year. But, Coach Stanton made a really good point this morning. I mean, they didn't have a lot of, it certainly wasn't a normal, quote unquote, normal offseason last year. Mm-hmm. And then on top of it, they had a new coaching staff. So, man, they were throwing a lot out there in fall camp. And he just mentioned to me this year, how much further ahead he thought they were, August 11th today versus August 11th last year, when you bring back a quarterback and you bring back some continuity on the coaching staff, just terminology and all those things. So, but I look at Blake as, you look at what he did in baseball this year. He was a really nice player for them last year, and you could certainly see the talent in the skill. And he's the first team All-Stater. We haven't talked about that since that came out, but first team All-State by the Iowa High School Baseball Coaches Association. Stories up on the website if you want to read the whole 3A team. But man, I mean, he really took it to another level there this year. And so you kind of, I don't know if you say you expect first team All-State, but you see his maturity, his development on the baseball diamond. And really, I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago, that Xavier game, he was just really on top of it. And so he's a guy now with a year under his belt, more of a leader. He's a dual threat guy. Obviously they need to, he needs to be able to stretch the field a little bit through the passing game. And I'm sure that's something that they feel better about this year with the year under their belt, as far as just schematically and everything. But he's going to be key for them, because, like you said, last year kind of was able to lean on a Colton Hoffman at receiver, Jackson Ryan at running back, and some of those guys. And this year they're going to have good, talented skill guys. It's Solon. Of course, they're going to put guys in there that are going to be able to be explosive playmakers or be really solid playmakers. But he's going to maybe have a little bit bigger role, probably a much bigger role in the offense. But he's a competitor. He's one of those guys that I mean, he eats that stuff up. So they're going to have guys in those positions that he can get the ball to. But it'll be interesting to see how they kind of tailor it around him a little bit more this year, maybe instead of those other guys. But and they bring back a couple really good guys up front, and Caden Knipper and Gage Marty too, who are real athletic high school offensive linemen. I mean, Gage Marty's a exceptional wrestler, and those guys are both in that. It's like you stand next to him and you certainly aren't like, oh, you're undersized. I mean, these are 225, 240 pound kids. I mean, they're huge and they're strong, but they're not that kind of old school traditional 270 pound linemen, but they can both really move. They've got that athleticism. They've got that explosion. So they've got the nucleus there, Rob. They need to break in some of those new guys too. And they're going to be breaking in a lot of guys. I think they bring back 7 or 8 starters. So a lot of new guys, but it's a broken record here. How well Solon has done that, for decades, and how well Regina has done that for decades when they have new kids that step in. They always seem to be ready to play. And that's a credit to, I watched at practice today. I watched, Mark Sovers and some of those guys work with their fresh soft group. And they've had that continuity and that coaching staff for a long time. And those kids that come up from freshman, sophomore team are always, ready to play relatively quickly at the varsity level. So that's a big key for them, I think. But it will be interesting to see how they kind of tailor that offense, maybe a little bit more to Blake Timmons this year. But like I said, he's a gamer. He's one of those guys that's certainly going to be up for that challenge.
A few more minutes here, and then we'll wrap it up. We've done pretty well considering how unprepared we were. I saw a tweet from Derek Sawvell from the Wilton Durant Advocate News about the RVC changes. Did you see that? And what have you heard on that?
Going to be interesting. It's Makokata from Wamak to RVC. North Cedar's leaving the RVC North after this school year, so I think for 2022-23. So that's a kind of a natural switch there on the north side. And then I think Beckman is the other one.
Yeah, Beckman.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to be, we just wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't get some realignment talk in, right, Rob, based on what's been going on in the world.
Dude, I'm still trying. I know I'm going to be messed up with the 5 classes in football this year. I'm trying to ignore that as long as I can. But yeah, we need realignment talk.
No, it will be interesting because I do think without going crazy here, I do think overall, and it started a little bit. I don't have inside information on this. I have talked to people, and I'm not going to throw names out or whatever, but I have talked to people because I think it started Iowa high school, quote unquote, realignment. And I'm joking, but it obviously started, I think the conversations for a lot of people started with the Des Moines public schools, right, breaking away from the suburban schools in Des Moines, which, I think Waterloo East is going to go with that group. And it's, is
that next year? That's not this season.
No, I believe it's next year.
Okay.
So, but it's, that kind of, and I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth. That kind of like looking to be in a competitive situation, right? So and that sounds like I'm saying that teams can't compete. That's not what I'm saying, but you're looking for like opponents, more. And I think that's kind of started the conversation. And if geography factors into it, obviously that's a factor, but these teams are, kind of just looking at it more from that standpoint. And I think you're going to see more people look at that up and down, down from 4A. That's obviously 4A down to 1A, Rob. Now, some of these places are more hampered geographically than others. But you have Waterloo East leaving the MVC, and then the talk kind of was, what does the MVC do? I think you could see a shift in, let's say, 5 to 10 years of more places going back to smaller conferences of 8. You look at the RVC, I think was 14. MVC, a lot of these were in the 14 to 16 range, right? And you double up on, the teams in your division for sports like basketball or whatever, and you play everybody once, maybe in some other sports. And obviously football doesn't have the conference scheduling anymore, but I think you could see a shift back to some of these places trying to go smaller, which allows you to play either a round robin with everybody in your conference or gives you the opportunity to schedule more like opponents out of conference, if that makes sense. So you're not just locked in. So let's say a sport like basketball, you're not just locked into 20 of your 23 games being against these teams. And if you can't compete with those teams, you're locked in. Or if you beat a lot of those teams soundly, you're locked into that too, where instead maybe you have 16 conference games, and then that allows you to schedule 9 others against like opponents from around the state, whatever level that may be. I don't know. I've had this conversation with some people on the pros and cons of going more that way, I guess. And you look at geography, what role does that play into it? But it certainly will be interesting. But as of right now, I think those two are both have made those decisions at the board level at those schools that Dyersville Beckman is leaving the WAMAC, and presumably the RBC could be a landing spot for them. But I think that is Makoka's plan, is to leave the WAMAC and join the RBC, which at first glance is probably a good move. I think those teams fit they fit naturally there, but like I said, it will be interesting to see if there's more of that shift, right? From a lot of these, all the way from the biggest to the smallest classes, to see if teams shift into more of a smaller conference, which means a lighter conference schedule, which means them more scheduling flexibility, I guess is the best way to say it. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I haven't talked to a lot of people about that. It's outside of our coverage area, but it obviously impacts our coverage area with us having, West Branch and Regina in the RBC and the River Valley and Clear Creek and Solon in the in the WAMAC. But the other thing too is, schools continue to either, some school districts continue to grow, others remain the same. So that's kind of always an evolving thing as well. So it'll be interesting to see where we're at in 5 years, maybe. But I do think there could potentially be that shift of people looking for maybe more of that flexibility in scheduling, Rob.
It'll be interesting to see what the MVC does too now with losing Waterloo East. I was kind of surprised Waterloo West didn't go with Waterloo East as well, but I don't know I'm not very close to the situation up there and the dynamics, but interesting to see how the because obviously now you have an unbalanced league right now.
Right. And that is again, you look at scheduling. That's the tough thing, is you want that balanced schedule. I should say even, because that's not there. I always say even, but you want that balanced. But again, that comes back to one of those things where, just for example, and I haven't talked to anyone, but like these conferences that have divisions. So if you just split those and those became two conferences, then you could have 7, or you could have 6, or you could have 8. Where that's the tough thing, is if you have divisions, you can't. It's tougher to have division of 8 and a division of 7 scheduling wise. So that's another reason that as teams do continue to go different areas, why I think you could see more of these places say, okay, not to bring it back because it's so different, and that's why I'm laughing. But you hear all these rumors about, like, for example, the Big 12 and the Pac-12 having a merger, but then, maybe we could have like a scheduling alliance, where that does make sense in high school, where, hey, we were a conference for X number of years. We're going to become 2 conferences. But right here, you have, if the RVC became 2 conferences, Rob, just for example, and no, I have not talked to anyone about that. I've seen that floated on social media and stuff too. But let's say that the North and South split there. Right there, you have a big pool of people that you could call for those non-conference games and say, hey, you were about like us last year in football, or I should say football's district, but in basketball or soccer or whatever. So right there, you have a pool of people that you could contact and theoretically have a little bit of a scheduling, what did they call it? Like a scheduling agreement or whatever. So it would be interesting. If I was in charge, I think that would be a good way to go. It gives you a little bit more flexibility. Ultimately, what we're looking for is competitive games, right? This
isn't about money like college. This is about
exactly
competition.
But and I'll say the same thing about I coach my son's 8-year-old team, right? So ultimately, what I'm looking for is, I joke all the time with youth sports. I've probably told you this. You go to a tournament in basketball, you win a game by 20, you lose a game by 20, and you play a game that's like 2 points. Well, I'd much rather go to a tournament and go 0-3 and lose 3 games by 2 points than I would go to that tournament and go 1-2 where I win the game by 20 and lose the other 2. It's like, you want to play competitive games, and I think that's what everyone wants. Everybody wants to win, and you should. If you're playing high school sports, you should want to win. But I think everybody wants to play those competitive games. And so, you're never going to get a schedule whether it's 20 basketball games or 15 soccer matches or 40 softball games where you play all competitive, one run, one touchdown, one score games. That's not going to happen. But the more of those you can play for both sides and for kids, I think that's a good thing. So if you're able to schedule more opponents that are hypothetically, like similar to you, I think it's a good thing. Now, if we rearrange every conference in the world, does that mean that that's going to happen? No, there's no perfect solution to any of this, but I do think there's a lot of smart people that are much smarter than me and have their finger on the pulse more of this that are making good decisions for these things. So I think that's a positive thing, Rob.
Matt Koss, from our friend from the Quad City Times, just published a story. Speaking of timing here, and by the way, we're recording this on Wednesday, August the 11th, around midday. Matt's lead is for Maquoketa. It simply boiled down to location. When Central DeWitt opted to leave the WAMAC, it joined the Mississippi Athletic Conference 2.5 years ago. Maquoketa was left in a precarious position with no conference school closer than 47 miles and the average round trip approximately 150 miles. The travel became too much. We love the WAMAC. Maquoketa Activities Director Tom Grunwald said, the only reason we're leaving is distance. When DeWitt left, that put us in a tough spot.
And I honestly meant to say that. And again, I got too far ahead of myself. I think I retweeted Matt yesterday. He was the first, I don't want to say he was the first person that I saw that had the WAMAC. Obviously Matt's a good friend, but an incredible asset, an incredible, media person for high school sports in this area. But yeah, there you go. They're even on more of an island than what I realized.
Yeah,
I guess
I didn't realize that either.
47 miles and my geography is not perfect. We joked about it last year. I kept having to go to Maquoketa for district basketball games, so I know where it's at. But yeah,
they've got a fish restaurant out there.
Rob's seen the commercials. The commercials reeled Rob in.
Yes, now that's back in play. The fish farm, I believe it's called.
Longtime podcast listeners, if you've been with us, if you've stuck with us long enough, we were very enamored by the commercials. But no, that's a good. Again, the geography, the combination of things, and I think that's a net positive for the RVC.
But Maquoketa and Dyersville are seeking to join the RVC to start the 22-23 school year. That would be part of the North Division, along with Anamosa, Bellevue, Comanche, Cascade, Monticello, and Northeast. That makes complete sense.
Right. And I know I've talked to Jeff Linder from the Cedar Rapids Gazette about this. Jeff's covered high school sports in the state for a lot longer than I have, but I think we're starting to realign a little bit more with the way it actually used to be.
Yep.
Years ago. And again, I'm not saying that anybody messed up along the way, but Jeff has really good insight into that as well, and Matt Koss does too. But those guys, those are I think, and I couldn't tell you the names of these conferences, but I think that's kind of the way it was a while ago, Rob, with a lot of those teams grouped together. And if you remember, Anamosa has recently made the switch from the WAMAC to the RVC as well. So they're another one that flip-flopped there a couple years ago. So interesting times as far as that goes, but that's kind of the way it goes a little bit. Like I said, there's going to be these changes, enrollment, geography, and that's a great example in that story. One team, Central DeWitt going to the MAC really changed it for them geographically.
Yeah, and like you said, I'm sure we'll see changes on this in the next few years, and we'll continue to talk about it and give you guys updates. Right now, I'm focusing on Iowa high school football with 5 classes because it's going to take me probably to November to get used to it.
I don't know. I'm glad we had this conversation, Rob, because I need to go back and see the things that I've typed already. How many times I typed 4A, and I'm not joking around. I'm sure I've done it more than once, but that's going to be a tough one to break this fall. But Rob, we would probably, I didn't mention this to you before we started, but we would be remiss if we did not discuss the fact that Iowa high school basketball is adding a shot clock.
Yes.
In not this coming season, but what would that be? 2022, 2023 season.
Yeah.
So I'm springing that on you now, but we really,
35,
I don't have a
right?
lot. What's that?
35 seconds.
Yes.
They should make it a 10-second shot clock and then put lines around, have like a 4-point line, a 5-point line. I think they should just go nuts.
I will say, I've talked to a lot of people. I haven't written anything on it, so don't scour the website. I haven't done that. I've talked to a lot of people for a long time. You know, I mean, it's going to be kind of actually boring now that we actually have it. Like, what are we going to discuss all basketball season? What's everybody going to,
it's like painting the water tower over at Kinnick.
Exactly. Great. It's like,
now what are we going to complain about?
Exactly. They got that. And then I feel like they wanted it for years, but I feel like those same people were disappointed because now they're like, oh man, like, what am I going to complain about now? But I've talked to a lot of people for a long time, and look, it's not 100% thing, whether you're a player, a coach, a fan, whatever. It's not, nothing ever is. I've talked to a lot of people that are and I'm not saying this to be all like, I don't know anything about basketball. I've talked to a lot of people that coach at all levels, and I mean all levels, that are a lot more knowledgeable and have a much higher degree of they're a lot more involved in basketball than I am. And it's overwhelming amongst those people that this is something that they thought was a good thing for the game. I don't even want to say that they wanted, that they thought that this was a good thing for high school basketball. And I'll just leave it at that. I really will. I mean, we can talk more about it. We can discuss it. But as far as what I think about it, whenever people ask me that, and it's not a cop-out, I'm not trying to not give my opinion. When there's something like this, and I mean, look, there's a lot more controversial things in the world than a shot clock for high school basketball. But I try to go to people that know a lot more than I do about it. And it was overwhelming amongst those people. What do you think? Do you think this is good or do you think this is bad? It was overwhelming amongst those people that they thought it was a positive change if it would ever be implemented. And now it is. So I listened to those people a lot. So I guess that's my initial take on it, Rob. I'd be curious to even know what you think. And we have a good discussion on this sometime, but they seem to be overwhelmingly in favor of it being overall a positive change for the game of high school basketball.
Yeah, and that's good to hear because there are people that have a much greater understanding about how this will affect the quality of play. And that's really what you're looking at here. And really for us, Ryan, we're not going to know until it's instituted. You know, we could sit here all day and say, hey, these are the pros and the cons, but you don't know until you see it. And you don't know until there's a sample size over time, whether it's good or bad. So it's kind of one of those things about when you argue when there's no real answer, there's no correct or right answer to it, or, you can just go back and forth forever until your head spins around. But it's good to hear that people that are involved in the game feel like it's going to be a benefit. And if that's, if that's the case, then it's the right move. If it isn't, we'll find out over time.
And I think that's a great point, Rob, if you're having this discussion. I mean, it's not it's not that long ago to think about, there was no 3-point line in college basketball when I was a kid. I mean, think about that. Now I'm getting old, but that's not that long ago. And you think about some of these things, like, that's a great point, Rob, because you think about how all these sports have changed and things have been changed. And at the time, I was too young, but I'm sure that was a giant thing when that got added, right? Oh my gosh, should we add a 3-point line? Should we not add a 3-point line? And now you can't think of the game any other way, right? I mean, so will we be in 20 years? Will we just be, or 10 years, however long, will we be thinking back to the good old days before the shot clock ruined high school basketball, or will we just not be thinking of it any other way? So I think that's I think Rob brings up a great point there. We don't know, right? We can't say one way or another, but I'm looking
forward to the shot clock malfunctions.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, can't you guys fix?
Who's running that thing?
Hey, wake up over there. It's a benefit to the people that are in the stands that like to express their opinions from the stands. This will give them something else to focus on other than, hey, 3 seconds. He's in the lane.
Over the back. Maybe this is just a buffer to us having TV timeouts in high school sports.
Please. It's coming eventually. Hopefully I'm going.
I have to bring up the TV timeouts for Rob. Anyone that covers college sports, or maybe is it TV timeouts, Rob, or is it video reviews? Which do you enjoy more?
Yeah, video reviews are great too. All right, Ryan, I think we've exhausted the conversation on this one. We somehow squeezed out, I don't even know how long we've been talking, but hopefully it is coherent for people on the other end of this listening. Hopefully we made some sense today, and we'll try to make more next week when we come back. Enjoy your vacation. Take it easy. What you don't want is to need a vacation from your vacation.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, hopefully, the goal here is that when we record next week, that our listeners are like, man, Merkin just sounds so relaxed. Like he's just,
recharged.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, this has got to last me for like whatever that is, like 4. I mean, I need to get as much I need to get like 4 months worth of relaxation out of these 4 days, Rob, because I'm not going to get a lot of relaxation, from whenever we get back, August 16th to like December 20th. Like there's not going to be a lot of relaxation days, not a lot of recharging days scheduled into that. So especially, I'm not complaining. I love it. But if you saw our family Google calendar from like August, like 20, actually really truthfully, like the 17th or the 18th, but like the 23rd to like that Christmas break. Wow. I mean, it's on now. I mean, it is. I got stuff going on. So as everyone does. And I know Rob is in a similar situation too. So
take advantage, man. Take advantage of the next week. For those folks listening and I wonder if we're just going to talk about football for the rest of the month. We will add in the other fall sports here in the weeks coming as we get closer and Ryan gets a chance to get more intel on what's going on out there. We don't want to sound like a complete couple of idiots talking about things what we haven't reviewed.
Yeah, I should mention, that's a great point. I should mention, I told Rob, I've been focused on football here before vacation, but we have our volleyball players to watch is up. Cross country, we're gonna have super good volleyball again. We got a state championship type team in contender in Liberty. A bunch of really talented volleyball players. We'll get more into that because we have a couple volleyball teams here in the area that I don't think people will be talking about as much, that I think are really, really, really ready to make big jumps this year. And we'll get more into that. But cross country again, Rob, it seems like we say this every year. Holy cow, we got some super talented cross country kids. Golf, Rob, we got golf starting this week. Big golf meets. Unfortunately, a couple of those fall when I'm on vacation, but our golf gets rolling here in a matter of days for City West and Liberty. So golf, and then swimming, which I don't want this to sound condescending because I'm not, but people watch swimming on TV, really one of the few times that a lot of people watch swimming in the Olympics. And we come back into the pool and we have some super talented, we'll talk about it more, but some super, super, super talented female swimmers swimming this fall for City and West. So we'll have stories on all of that stuff throughout the fall. But, coming up here in the next couple of weeks, we'll get on the website, we'll get more into volleyball. We'll have our volleyball previews and our capsules, and we'll continue to have features and previews on football, but we'll get it more into cross country. We have a couple stories that I love doing each year for volleyball and for football, which is our breakthrough. I said last week, we're kind of into that as Rob covers Iowa. the summer is like watch list time, right? Everybody's on the
Mhm.
watch list. We kind of start our fall coverage with our 11 football players to watch, 7 cross country runners to watch, 6 volleyball players to watch. And then we do a couple more of those lists. And one of them that I always really like doing is the breakthrough candidates, people that are ready to step up to the next level. So we'll have that coming for volleyball and football here in the next couple of days. Like I said, keep an eye out for those coach question and answers. I thought those were really cool. I thought our coaches really kind of opened up and did a really good job with those. And then we're going to try a social media. We're going to have some presence on social media next week, announcing something that we're going to kind of try to do for the website. So keep an eye out for that too.
Those are called teasers, what Ryan just threw out there, teasers. And that's to draw the folks in here to the Seven Nation podcast, but more importantly, yourprepsports.com, which is constantly adding content that you guys will love, and check all of that out.
Awesome.
And we'll be back next week with some more conversation. Hopefully we'll be a little bit more recharged and energetic. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next week. Say goodbye, Ryan.
Bye.